You are listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul. Our theme music is a clip of Summer Nights by the Eric Jones Trio. It's provided by our friend Mark Chesanout, who plays with the Eric Jones Trio every Thursday and Sunday at Good Times Jazz Bar downtown.
Hey, welcome to Arts on the Air. This is Tamara Garvey. I'm pleased to be here with Jennifer Mack Watkins. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. It's so good to have you here. We've never met before, so I'm excited.
Yes.
I feel like my interviews, it's kind of a mix of people who I know very well or total strangers, so they both are fun in their own right. So Jennifer, I'm going to read, first to start us off, a bit of your bio from your website. Okay. So Jennifer Mack's work investigates societal conformities that isolate individuals to be confined to fit into a space. The space includes the complexities of being a woman, beauty images, relationships, body image, power, and gender roles. I love this. So first to start out, so you were born in Charleston,
Born
right?
in Charleston, South Carolina, born and raised.
What brought you to Savannah originally?
Wow, how'd I get? I've been so many places.
Yeah.
So I think I would probably first start off as like, I left Charleston after high school. Then I went to college at Morris Brown College, which is a historically black college university.
And that's in Atlanta,
That's
right?
in Atlanta,
okay.
Right? And then I had a chance to be able to take classes at the AUC, which is the Atlanta University Center, which is all the schools together within a cluster in a center of where the other schools are.
Okay, so
located.
that expanded your access to facilities.
Definitely so. So I took classes at Spelman and Clark Atlanta University,
cool.
and in my school as well, at Morris Brown College. And I had a really great experience doing that because I got a chance to meet other artists, other students from other colleges, and I got a chance to have other professors that were just not the ones in my school, but I got a chance to take painting at Spelman. I took printmaking at Clark Atlanta University.
Yeah.
And I took art education and ceramics and other studio classes at Morris Brown. So each school has their different, area that you'd have
their focus
that you would take. But I didn't major in studio arts. I did major in studio arts.
Yeah.
I didn't major like in painting or printmaking. So we took pretty much everything, sculpture,
That's great.
everything.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience. So after I finished Morris Brown, I went to Boston to go to grad school to get my master's in art education.
Okay.
But I was in the path of being an art teacher, and I still hold education dear to me, but just I don't want to be in the classroom anymore.
Did you have a certain age that you were aiming that you wanted to teach?
No, I wanted to teach everybody and everyone.
Okay.
And I still do, through my art and through workshops or whatever. And so basically after I finished grad school at Tufts, then I went back to Atlanta. I taught for a little bit, applied again because I wanted to get my master's in fine arts and printmaking.
Okay.
And then from there, I got into a few schools, but I chose to go to Pratt in Brooklyn. So I went to Brooklyn. I was there from like about 2007 to 2009. Then 2010, I met my husband, Curtis Watkins, and I met him, and I moved from Brooklyn to Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay.
And then I lived there from 2010 to about 2021. And then we moved to Savannah. So that's how I got here.
So you're in your second year here in Savannah.
Just second year.
So you've actually done a really similar thing to me of sort of bouncing back and forth between the South and like a big city in the Northeast, because I also have gone back and forth between Savannah and Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. So how does it compare? I mean, so you were in Atlanta, and then you were in Boston, and then you were in New York. And how is it to be in Savannah? Are you like happy to have this kind of break in the pace of it, or?
I'm still adjusting every day. I'm always looking for like what's happening now, like where I gotta be, and like there's nowhere to be but the same routine every day. And so I do like the break and the pace and the slowness. A lot of time to reflect and think to yourself.
Yes.
And spend time with family. But I do miss the busyness. But I feel like when I get that itch, I just try to find a way to go to a place that's a little bit more bustling and come back and respect the slowness pace that Savannah has here.
I feel like the thing that I miss most about big cities is just the public transportation. I really would love to not have to drive anywhere.
I know. I loved it. When I was working in Harlem, teaching there, at Harlem Children's Home, I worked there for about 6 years, but I loved taking the A train to the C train and then the PATH train and the...
Oh, you're from New Jersey, you had to take the actual train.
Yeah, I took the actual train, and the bus to Times Square, and you decide which way you want to go from there. That's the center of where all the trains cross and stuff.
Yeah,
I definitely
that's where the
miss all
buses from
that.
New Jersey come in, right?
Yes,
is right there.
42nd Street.
Yeah.
Yep.
They recently, I don't know if you know, they recently expanded the DOT bus, which is free, and so it comes out here, like out to Victory Avenue now, so you can get on a little free bus that like tools around in a rectangle around the city, and I've done it, and I love it.
Well, I drive down here. No dot,
Okay.
no dot for me, but for the dot passengers, you just heard it from Tamara. That is expanded.
It has expanded, yes. So if you're missing that bus life, then
I'm not missing it that much. I took it every day. I'll just take a break for now.
it's rare to get anything for free, I find. So the fact that, I mean, especially coming from somewhere in New York where it's like you would never get any public
Like,
transport
and you're
for
always
free.
like, okay,
It's
what's
amazing.
the catch? Like, why is this
Ugh,
free? Like,
I
where are you
know.
taking me? How far I gotta walk from where I'm going, where I'm at now?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so at what point did you get into printmaking? Because your focus now is sounds like woodblock and silkscreen. So in undergrad, where you were jumping around and you were testing all these different arts, where you first came across printmaking?
Would probably be high school. I'm
Oh.
from Charleston, South Carolina, and so we used to have like artists that would come in and work with us because I was like identified as a gifted and talented student, like probably like in elementary school. So we'd have summers where we'd go a week, but it wasn't until high school where we got introduced to a printmaker. He came to our course for a week, and that time we built our portfolio to like continue to apply ourselves to other art classes in high school. So then I was introduced to monotypes, and so monotypes is basically you have a plexiglass and you have like an oil-based ink, and you are adding or subtracting the image away, so that when you have the wet paper and you run it through the press, it makes like kind of like a painting print.
Yeah.
You get only a couple of them before they start to look very ghosty.
Okay.
But it's just meant to just maybe rent a small one or two, and the color kind of gets fainter and fainter.
Yeah.
And you have to keep applying.
It's like
it.
an original painting, and then you get a few prints out of it, and that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So I mean, I did that in high school, and so I hadn't carved anything, hadn't done any silk screening, but
Yeah.
I like the fact that I could reproduce my own image, and I could change it just by a wipe or adding, and I like that. I like that a lot. So I think when I went to college, we didn't major in like a particular medium. So I took like printmaking 1, and I liked it. I took printmaking 2, and I was like, okay, well that's pretty much stopped there. And then I had independent studies, and I was like Clark Atlanta. My professor was Professor Christopher Hickey, and so I was like, okay, I want to take independent studies 1, and I was like, okay, I want to do some more. So basically, I ended up taking independent studies 2 because there's only him and I. Like the program was so small that independent studies was just like you and a teacher.
You and that him.
maybe another person.
Yeah.
But that made it really like.
So you chose, that's when you could delve more into
Yeah,
the
so
printmaking.
I continued to take in some type of printmaking every year until I graduated.
Okay. You took like as much as possible, basically.
Yeah, much as possible, and I learned a lot, along that way. And then by the time I went to grad school, I was still like when I was working in between like teaching, I still find a way to continue to educate myself. I think education is really important. And not waiting for like a school, but like I would take classes at like art centers or like
like small continuing ed classes.
Atlanta College of Art was open during that time, so I would take classes there, and so I would just find ways to continue to learn technique. And so I continued to do that. Even when I was in Boston learning to be an art teacher, I still took printmaking classes, as electives.
There's so many different types of printmaking too,
So many
and I feel like
different types.
I would love to talk more about this because especially for non-artists, and it seems like the most like unusual and otherworldly, and like the most people haven't been exposed to it. Like you had it in high school even, but I think a lot of people could have gone even through college and not have experienced much printmaking. So I guess maybe the forms that people know of is like lino cut, where you have this what would you call it, a block, and it's kind of rubbery almost, and you carve into it an image, and then what you do is wood block. So is that carving as well, but into wood?
It's carving into wood, but for me, I try to take some of the same technical, I guess, like techniques technical techniques. I've taken some of the same techniques I learned with lino to the wood.
Yeah.
But with Japanese wood block, it's fun because I'm able to take what I learned, with like lino cutting and relief in the Western tradition, and then taking it and fusing it together with, Japanese aesthetics, and taking away whole areas but leaving some.
So you're doing more carving, like more work with your hands, because you're carving away a lot?
They're both a lot of carving, but it's just I feel like when I was taught, you leave a lot in the Western. Like you want to keep a lot of the texture there.
Okay.
Right? And you're not really taking out a lot of large areas. Like you're leaving it
Yeah.
For it to show noise and texture
And then
textures.
what happens to the areas that you leave is going to have the color, the ink on it.
It's going to be the color,
yeah.
right?
And what you've taken away is going to be just the paper
It's
color.
going to be the paper. But I feel like it's important to have that understanding of Japanese woodblock because you're layering blocks upon blocks and you want those open areas so you can continue to put in those colors. Like the same way you do it Western, but it's so much different because sometimes you might not want to have texture in an open area.
Okay, like it would be too busy looking?
It'll be, I mean, it depends on, what your own aesthetics is, but I think like just traditionally there's a balance, I feel like that's the difference, right?
Yes, that's a real art to that.
It's a big balance. Yeah, it's definitely a balance between like textures and open areas and solid areas.
Yeah.
And, line work versus no line work, detail versus broad and thick. So all that really goes into any composition, but I feel like you can't go wrong by looking at a Japanese print because they got the balance to a T.
Do you know, this is interesting. I never realized that, like, so lino cut with the rubbery softer blocks is more of a Western thing and the wood block is Japanese. Do you know why that came to be? Like why the Western world started with lino?
I don't know where lino came from.
Okay.
It's man-made, but wood is something that it grows from a tree. And I feel like when going to Japan in 2015 and going again, I went in 2014. I went 2 years in a row. One for a conference and I presented there. We have a whole community of Japanese woodblock printmakers who meet every 3 years. And we go different places. Sometimes Japan. We went to Hawaii one time. Wow. This time was virtual, but it was hybrid. Next 3 years is going to be somewhere else in Japan, of course. But I feel like just for me, what makes it more Western attuned, versus Japanese is like more of the materials.
Okay.
I feel like in just my eyes, I feel like using natural wood. It's not man-made. And it's gonna behave a little bit different than a rubber surface.
Yeah, you get the texture of the wood too, right?
Right, and then you don't have to. I mean, like some artists today who do Japanese woodblock decide to use a press. Some people decide to use oil-based inks. But for me, I like the fact that I have a choice. If I don't want to smell the oil-based ink, then I don't have to. So with Japanese woodblock, that's a really big difference.
Yeah.
Is that I use like watercolor or gouache or rice base, right? But some people choose to do oil-based. But I feel like with Western, you can't use watercolor on lino.
Oh, you have to use oil-based, yeah.
Oil-based or water soluble or water is washed off with water.
So I'm curious about so also for people who haven't done this type of art before, the cutting implements that you use for it are like you have a little handle and then it's this thing where the tip of it is metal and it's super sharp. And I remember the few printmaking classes I've ever taken, the professors are very like, you got to watch out when you're pushing this thing and keep your other hand out of the way. And if your hand pushes through really hard and you jab something, like you would literally be stabbing something. You can really hurt yourself. Exactly. So I'm trying to imagine carving into wood, and it seems very physically difficult. Is there? Is the wood soft?
It's actually much easier. There's different. The cherry wood would be the hardest wood. Okay. But I use Shina. It's a softer wood. But I feel like the difference between with even carving Western versus Japanese is that with the Western you're gouging out, like you're taking away. It almost looks like. But then when I do Japanese woodblock, it's more like with so much more finesse. Like you're carefully thinking out. You're not just gouging out areas.
Yeah.
But you're planning out. You're carving where you want to be, and you're preparing that wood. And then when you go to take the wood out, it just comes out on its own. There's no force.
Okay.
There's no force. I mean, I think unless you have like cherry, that's like you use a mallet. It might be a little bit harder.
Oh wow.
But with the Shina, I don't need a mallet. I just need to know how to cut it at an angle so that when I go to it, it just pops out because I've already have told the wood where to go.
I'm not familiar with this really soft wood, but that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's very. I actually like cutting it. I like cutting this wood better than lino. Lino is like you have to heat it to get it soft, and like either get the battleship that's either gray or brown. Yeah, and it's just tough, and it's rubber. It's man-made.
It is, yeah.
It's man-made.
Do you usually do so when you've prepared a wood block, do you do one color at a time over it, or would you paint different colors into it in one go and then press that?
For me, I think it depends on if people want to have that different way it bleeds into, because you're dealing with watercolor, so it depends on aesthetically.
Oh, so it might bleed around.
But for me, I like it to stay in place, and so I'll do a color, like if I do red, and I'll come back to the next day and I'll do the next color. But a lot of planning goes into that, because either on your sketches you're planning out, okay, red's going to go here, yellow's going to go here, or sometimes people go as far as like coloring each area, and then that's really a lot of planning too. I usually don't do the full color, but I write down where I want the colors to go.
And in between, it has to dry. The paper has to dry in between each time, so it's like a very kind of a long process. The more colors you have,
definitely. So, and the difference, I feel like, even when you would like print a large edition of lino art relief, you can at least mix your colors up, and you would close it up in container aluminum foil and save it for later. But for Jackson's woodblock, you can have jars and all that stuff, but I feel like it's liquid, right? And so a lot of time I spend writing down what colors I use to mix that color, because it's really harder to keep that color the same.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna do that one color, you might as well just do that color all in one day.
Wow.
Because if you run low,
because you're gonna have to recreate it.
That brush can absorb that. If you might think you have enough, and then you put that brush in there, and that brush absorbs all that. Oh, that's the last bit of my red.
Yeah.
So you gotta mix it again.
Oh my gosh. So. This sounds like
it's like a science.
It's very scientific. Yeah. And all these like tricks that you've come up with are born of having done it one way in the past and being like, oh man, I got to come up with a way to fix that in the future.
Exactly. But I can go all day about that, but
and the technique also, I came across in my little research that it's moku hanga. Is that right? The name of the technique. Cool. And also in the little research I came up with, they mentioned that the famous woodblock image that people might know is that the Great Wave by Hokusai, which I love.
Yeah. And so basically, Hokusai, I got a chance to see those when I went to Japan. I got a chance to see some of the sketches. I got a chance to see some of his woodblocks that were carved. And some other prints that he did, and also drawings he did of people and animals. Like, he just showed how he was able to animate just the littlest thing to adults and just really study it. He studied everything. It wasn't anything that he didn't study. And I had a chance to be able to see that in person in Japan.
I love it. Is there a particular museum that they have a lot of his
everywhere?
Work? Yeah,
everywhere. And then but I feel like, I don't remember what museum I went to when I was there, but everyone knows that print. It's a very, very popular one.
Yeah. I have that as the background on my computer. I love that image. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the imagery in your work. On your website, I saw you have one series that was called Housewives and one called No Pattern Necessary. And the Housewives series, it looks sort of traditional scenes like in magazine ads of women kind of working in the kitchen and doing housework. But in your pieces there with black women, and then in the No Pattern Necessary, there's like the imagery of these 60s shift dresses, and they're covered in patterns of hairstyles or lingerie. I don't know if you wanted to speak a little bit about your inspiration for those two series.
Okay, well, I think with the Housewives series, I think it'd have to start off with like when I got married. I said, wait, I'm supposed to be in this kitchen doing stuff, and like what I'm supposed to do. And so I really have a print that's on view right now at the Look exhibition at Sulphur. It's called What to Do. So I'm like, okay, what do you do when you get in the kitchen? What's the proper thing? What do you do first? But I think a lot of that has something to do with like when I got married, and like, okay, now I had to like make the kitchen the center of my home. But I got a chance to witness that from my mom growing up in the South. Like, the kitchen is the center of the home, you know? And so like that love, what that you have in the kitchen is a love that is spread throughout a home. And so I feel like, the smells that you smell when pecan pie or chicken is cooking, like you're home, and like just like like the texture of the placements on the table, like all that is showing part of the home and what's important in the center and the love in the home. And so I feel like I wanted that to feel the same feeling you would get in a kitchen that shows that something that you are loved when you step in, and when you come to sit down and eat, you're at the table eating this wonderful meal. So I wanted to feel like in those prints. And then with the No Pattern Necessary, that's the piece that you're talking about with the hairstyles. My mom is a hairstylist too, awesome cook too. Still eat her food today. She's here in Savannah. Hey, Mom. And so like she had a hair salon for about 30 years. And so she would do hair from the time the sun came up to the time the sun came down. She had clients that come every 2 weeks, come early in the morning, the same time. Every good size, you can speed them up and get them out. You start one and you don't just stay with one. You start with one and you go to the next one, you wash that hair, that's drying. So it's like a
that's like cooking also, where you have to have a lot going at the same time.
Definitely. So I think just like observing her, working a number of clients at one time, and how there isn't a pattern that we have to follow, as women. We don't have to be a stay-at-home mom. We don't have to, we don't have to work for anyone. We can work for ourselves,
Yeah.
you know. And so I feel like just that piece is a combination of like honoring my mom and also feeling that we don't have to have a pattern that we have to be as women. And I really took the time to think about like hand drawing the different sizes, because you know, when you get a dress pattern, you choose what size and you cut on the dart. But I just decided to use all 3 darts are there for different sizes because there isn't a pattern that we have to follow.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of.
It almost sounds like, so that second series almost sounds like a rebuttal or a response to the first, because you said in the first series when you got married you felt like this pressure, like suddenly you're quote a wife and so you're supposed to be in the kitchen, which is like a culturally imposed cage almost. And in the second one you're saying that there's no pattern for women. So
Exactly.
I like that.
Exactly. And so yes, I think that's kind of like I try to use my own life or questions I have or things I experience and put in my artwork.
Yeah. And I love that you in both of them, like in the first one where it's these very typically 60s like Good Housekeeping looking ads, but it would always just be white women and it would be the same, you know. So I love that you're doing this same scene but with Black women. I think
It's funny
wonderful.
that you picked that up, because I felt like once I kept looking at these, I was really drawn to like those 1960s like Life magazine, and I would occasionally, it would be really hard to find Ebony's, you know, and Jets, really hard to find those. But I was really like, okay, well, when I looked at the Life magazine, I loved the spread, how big they were. But I'm like, well, why is it always like these white women? So I started like just typing up, and I'm like, okay, advertisements, and I was like, okay, gotta be another way I could find these ads. And so I was like, well, I gotta make my own, because we have always been cooking for our families, and why weren't those ads diverse back then?
Yeah.
You know, and why is it that, you know, it's just the same kind of format that you have for every ad? And I definitely wanted to kind of make it like I try to think about like biases and stereotypes and history, like how history thinks that, you know, that this is how it should be. And so I feel like I wanted to make contrast, and so people will be like, oh, she's in the kitchen. No, it's her kitchen.
Yeah.
She's not in someone else's kitchen, and she's not the help.
Oh, like she's not.
You're not
yeah,
the help.
she's not
This
the
is
cook,
her
the housekeeper.
kitchen. This is her kitchen.
Yeah,
and
that's
she's
great.
not barring. She's not coming in for the day to cook for you. Like she's not serving anyone, but she is the center of her family. This is her home. So just to clarify.
No, I love that. Like
Yeah.
in that book and movie, The Help, where women were like going to white women's houses to work for them and take care of their kids, and then they went home and they had the same things to do with their own families.
We could think even further back than history into this history of America and think about that as well.
Yeah, well, I love that in your work. Were those so those 2 series that you did, was that for a particular show or anything, or just
An ongoing conversation I can come back to anytime. So
Okay.
I feel like I like to try to. I don't like to. I start series and I'm like, oh, I can come back to that later and come back. So I feel like I always wanted to have like that open dialogue, and like not just preparing for shows, but just an open dialogue of how I see the world, so I can come back and add more later, you know. But I like to have openness with the series.
And so you said you have one of those pieces that's on right now at Sulfur Studio that people
What
can
to
see.
do.
Okay, cool. I wanted to switch a little bit and talk about, you mentioned silkscreen a little bit, which is just another form of printmaking, right?
Yes.
Can you explain to people what silkscreening is?
Okay, so I think it's almost like you can kind of see it as like a photographic method. I mean, there's different ways, but the way that I like to see it as, like, you have a screen, and people most people think of it like t-shirts, like, you know, t-shirts on the screen, you print it, but I don't do t-shirts. I do works on paper, I say. But basically you have a screen, and then you have images that are like a positive, like on the acetate, and it's burned with a photographic emulsion chemical that's dried, and then you have then you have exposure unit that burns the image, the negative, into
It
the
burns
screen,
it onto the screen.
into the screen.
Yeah.
And then you wash it out in all the areas that are open. That's where the ink is received. And then
Okay.
you put the ink on there. You have the squeegee, and you pull across each layer.
Yeah, that's
colors
what
to
people
make
might have this
one
image
whole.
in their head of, like, the material, and then on top of it the screen, and then somebody sitting there with like a squeegee running it back and forth over it.
Definitely. So that's what.
That is a very long
level.
process to make an image.
But it's fun. But there's different
Yeah.
ways how you can use the material, you know. And so people, you know, there's so many different ways how that's really advanced, because I think when silk screening first started, it was pretty smelly. There was a lot of oil-based inks, you know, and then eventually, you know, they perfected the water-based inks.
That's good.
There's still some toxic, but not as bad as the oil-based inks.
I feel like in
first
all
started.
art, it started with oil-based ink, and it's very smelly, and it stains everything. And then the materials used to clean it up, like turpentine or white spirits, like that's very smelly and very toxic as well.
And that smell. I was this work study student at Pratt, and I was assistant shopkeeper, and so I had to fill up all those things. We were not a green shop. I'm sure they are now.
Oh, yeah. So you were just smelling
we
all
had
that.
this all the time. Like the minute I come back from break, it would just be overtaken because
I can imagine. Yeah,
it'd just be overtaken.
Yeah.
We had to take those rags and put them in this red can and make sure nothing explode.
Yeah, everything is like a fire hazard. Like it could just combust. I feel like most people don't think about that. A lot of art materials are
even the ink on the hands, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And so I feel
it
like
gets on your hands and it's very hard. Like it's there for ages, or you're like rinsing it off with white spirits and being like, what am I putting into
like,
myself?
Why put it on your skin, right? And so I think a lot of printmaking, have really evolved, but a lot of it does have chemicals and some toxic smell. But that's why I decided to learn Japanese woodblock, because I said, like, if I'm going to have kids, I have to be able to do this in my home. And so I decided to, like, figure out ways of how I could, like, do it in my home without having to smell oil-based or clean with white spirits on my hand.
So the Japanese woodblock, it's easier to use water-based materials.
It's water-based. I use water-based. And so, I just make sure my colors are still sealed in glass containers. I don't have anything openly flying around, hopefully not too much. But
where do you find, so you mentioned in the silk screening process you need an enlarger or something to burn
exposure unit
to burn the exposure from, you said, like the acetate sheet onto the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you find that machine to do that?
Usually, I have one. I have myself now.
Oh, okay.
But schools have them.
Okay.
Or you buy yourself. Or sometimes people do it with like old school. They go outside at light.
Wow.
But this would not be a good day because it's overcast.
You need a real bright day.
It's like a whole day probably to burn it, right? But some people use like floodlights, and they just hold it.
Oh.
Or sometimes they can put the light directly on it, and just like that takes a longer process.
Just very DIY.
Yeah, very DIY. But I have a unit, and so it's UV light,
cool.
and it's faster than a regular exposure unit. So like think of it like photographic.
Yeah, is it the same type of machine that you would use just to make like a film photo? Is it that?
It's like they're like strips of light. But the LED lights are like Tango lights, and then like the other ones that are they have like strips of light that you would see in the ceiling.
Track light, like track lighting.
I think so.
That's cool that you have that machine. I want to come see your studio at some point because it sounds like you're this mad scientist with your little jars of things around in your machinery.
Jars of colors.
How do you? So if you're gonna do a new piece and you is there a way that you decide early on whether you want to do it woodblock versus silk screen? Like, are they better for different types of imagery that you're doing?
Yeah, I think for me, it depends on the size and if I want wood texture, or how big I want to go. Because the wood can get kind of expensive, depending on the size.
Yeah.
But if I want to go bigger, then I'll go bigger and do silk screen.
The silk screen?
Yeah.
How big can your machine do?
Well, this one is about 23 by 31, but when I was in New York, they would have large screens, large units, so I could print it. I used to print even bigger than 23 by 31 is small for me, but I used to get screens about almost as tall as me.
That's the thing to miss about being in school, is just the access to facilities like that,
facilities
right?
too, but even after I graduated, I was renting at Lower East Side print shops. So I would rent per month, and I'd have a space to keep my screens, and I had a drawer to keep my papers.
That is very cool.
Life after grad school.
Yeah.
And then I had a spot for my supplies, and so it's a taste of the art world. I think everybody should try to do a shared space after grad school, because you do miss the access to supplies.
Yeah, the material and I guess just the
and it becomes really real when you have to buy the supplies yourself. And
it does.
And then it also cuts out access for people, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's one of the hardest parts about being in Savannah, because there isn't a community print shop that is here that's accessible, and so then it kind of makes it more of an inclusive medium, because so I think I'm trying to figure out ways of how to make that
that's great. I mean, this is I want to talk to you more about this, and we were going to take a break anyway, so when we come back we'll talk about, I guess, Savannah versus Boston and New York as far as access for printmaking. So thank you very much. I'm here with Jennifer Mack Watkins, and we will be right back.
You are listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul.
Trees are one of Chatham County's most treasured natural resources. Beyond their beauty and cultural significance, the impact of trees are far-reaching and compounding, spanning from economic benefits to health improvements to climate change resilience. Trees are woven into every aspect of our lives. Savannah Tree Foundation protects and grows Chatham County's urban forest through tree planting, community engagement, and advocacy. More information is available at savannahtree.org. This portion of WRUU's programming is brought to you by listeners and by Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day Natural Foods has been serving Savannah's healthy food and supplement needs since 1978. It is located at the corner of Bull Street and Park Avenue. They have online ordering and curbside delivery available, and now a walk-up window for smoothies, juices, and sandwiches from the deli. They are open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday. More information can be found at brighterdayfoods.com.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming, and it doesn't just mean that we're a voice for the community. It also means that we're counting on the community to keep us going, and you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to WRUU.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
Hey, welcome back to Arts on the Air. This is Tamara Garvey, and I'm speaking with Jennifer Mack Watkins. Welcome back.
Hey.
So we were talking about her printmaking work and that she does silkscreen and woodblock print. And I think before the break we were just talking about the differences between where she went to school, which was Atlanta and Boston and New York, and now being in Savannah as a working artist, and just the differences in access for like shared printmaking facilities, and how interesting it is to be in school and just have built-in like community and all the equipment, and then once you get out and you are just on your own doing it, and how hard that is.
Definitely that's a lot of trueness to that.
Yeah, and I guess printmaking in particular is like, you know, maybe you need a lot of space. Like you said, you need a big sink because it's kind of messy and there's particular equipment. What are the types of equipment that you think would be usul to like have in a shared facility?
Like in a print shop?
If you had your dream print shop,
wow.
What kind of facility is it? Like different corners for different types of printmaking?
Well, definitely different centers that you put in place for different parts of the process of the printmaking process.
Yeah.
And so basically, I would see an ideal dream space would be like concrete floors, because you don't have to worry about like getting things messy and messed up.
Yeah.
In a place to like painted white chipboard where you can like put pin up works as you work on it to kind of see as everything comes together.
Things need a lot of drying time too.
Yeah,
right?
drying time.
Yeah.
But drying time I would not pin them up, but I would get a drying rack.
Okay.
So I would like to have a drying rack. Maybe like 30, 50 stacks. I can just flip them up and put them in there. Drying rack, of course, and then nice sound system. I think music is important. And then refrigerator. And then also like different areas where you have a place where you can cut down your paper.
Oh, yeah.
And then a place to like print, because you want to be printing idealistically.
So a lot of flat surfaces.
Yeah, so a lot of flat surfaces. Good lighting.
Yeah.
And then I guess like a exposure unit, of course, and a washout sink that's a good size. Yeah. With a filtration system.
A big messy sink.
Yeah, a big messy sink with a great filtration system. But I think that would be ideal.
I love just imagining what the ideal space is.
Yeah.
So we're putting it out there. Maybe
it'd be about this size.
Okay.
This backyard.
we're in the back courtyard of Culturist Union, and they have a lovely back space.
Come on by. A great lavender iced tea.
It's interesting. There was somebody else about how in Savannah there's a couple of different like clay communities where there's shared spaces, because they also have a need for big equipment that you need to like share the cost of, the kilns and the wheels and all that, but for some reason there hasn't been a shared print shop in Savannah. So I think as time goes on and we get more and more in the art scene, this would be an amazing
So if anyone's interested, reach out.
Let's see. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I saw on your website, you've been in some really interesting sounding locations for exhibitions and then your work being held in permanent collections. It looks like in 2017 you were in a show called the Whitney Houston Biennial.
That was a lot of fun.
What is that?
Wow, purely women empowerment, like Christine Finley, I believe. And so she would have these biennials, usually around the time of the Whitney Biennial.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like an interesting title that she took that time to really capitalize on that time.
That's really funny.
I remember the most current one that I did, that particular show, it was a year after I had my daughter, and it was probably one of the biggest shows that I had been to after I had her. So it was really monumental for me in many parts to be in a show fully by women and for women.
Yeah.
Well, not for, it was for everyone, but it was the idea, and only women were in this show.
Yeah.
And so
was this in New York?
it was in New York.
Okay.
Like not too far from like Little Italy and
Oh, that's cool to be in
Chinatown.
Manhattan.
It was in Manhattan.
It'd be really hard to put things on in Manhattan.
Yeah, not too far from Broome Street. And so I was kind of like the Chasma something building or something like that. Anyway, it was like people were like lined outside the door trying to
Wow.
get in. I remember there was like rose flowers on the ground and stuff, and like red carpet when you walk in.
Wow,
It was like
that's
it was really
cool.
nice. Any way that Whitney would have it, like why not have rose petals and red carpet on the ground for Whitney?
That's
Right?
what a great event.
Yeah, but it was awesome. But I feel like we had to pick someone who was like a Whitney to us.
Oh.
And so so I chose Janelle Monáe, and I had like another image, the Black Marilyn of like, it was like a celebrity, and I made her hair really with I drew it was a silk screen, so I could see the lines of the hair. So I had two portraits in there, a painting and a silk screen
Wow.
I put in there, and I think another two silk screens.
Did you ever like reach out to Janelle Monáe or tag her or anything to show her?
I
your
might have
image?
tagged her or something like that, but I didn't reach out to her. But she's like my Whitney Houston. But it was really great because I don't even know. I think Christine had reached out to me and invited artists, and then I was like, sure. And then it was great. I think I might have done it 2
opportunity.
times. Yeah, it was really awesome.
Yeah. And then I saw on your website also that your work has appeared in really prominent places. I'm going to name them. This is amazing. The Library of Congress, the Met, and the Smithsonian Museum of African American History. How did these come about? That's incredible.
Well, I think the 3 that you had just mentioned. Well, I go with the last one. You said the Smithsonian.
In the Smithsonian, yeah.
Right, and so I was part of I do like a lot of collaborative projects, whether it be literary or print portfolios. And so with those, I think there is power in doing things by yourself, but also in groups, and finding people who are like mind, and people who might not see the medium, but they come together with a common vision to share their work in an accessible way. And basically with print portfolios, in particular for that one, and then I think I did some other ones with the Met, right? And so that's Black Women of Print.
Okay.
That was, we were a collective, and that we said we wanted to make a portfolio, founded by Tanikia Word, and so we had a theme. So sometimes there are themes with them, but I think the fact that when you could put so many works of art into one box, and then, that can be sold to like different institutions, and that's
Yeah.
a way to like,
So you were in a collective, and then you all had a bunch of work together, and you like pitched to the Met, or did a proposal? Or?
I'm sure Tanikia sent a proposal to different institutions
Yeah.
and see who was interested, and that's how that worked for that.
Wow. So they got back to you, and they were like, yes, we would like to show these at the Met.
Well, I don't know all the process. I just know that we had to make it, and she handled all the
Wow.
admin stuff, and we made the work, and everything was organized together for that particular, for the Met.
Yeah.
But for the Smithsonian, I was part of Rush Arts Philanthropic Organization by Danny Simmons, and so basically that was like the 21st anniversary, and so every couple of years they would make a portfolio. They made one now. But then basically that was sold to institutions as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, so that's kind of how it works. But I feel like doing group projects are really important. And then also I'm in like a literary project called The Womb of Violet. We did 2 issues, Rizzograph printed books. And they
What
have...
is it?
Rizzograph is like a form of printing where you have... the color is on a drum, and like it's rolled through like old school.
Oh.
And you put each color at a time. You put the cyan in, take it out, you put the yellow in, and you run on
Oh.
top in layers. And that was made into a book. They took our art, scanned it, and did a Rizzograph, and that's in the Met's library as
Wow.
well. So I like to see it. I like to see my art in different ways, whether it be a print portfolio,
Yeah.
Rizzograph, and then seeing how it can transform. Because that was an interesting project to work on, because I did it as a paper cut, and then it came out as a Rizzograph print. With Rizzograph prints, it's like dust come off the drum, and it's like really pixelated, and so
Okay.
it kind of breaks the image down to like small pixelated images
Yeah.
to make a whole, because you're doing layer on layer, drum at a time, taking it out and putting it in and running it again.
So there's a lot of texture.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think of that look where in the finished image that there's just a lot of, it's so different from like looking at some kind of digital art that was created on a computer and printed out, but that the evidence of like the machine and the texture of the physical thing and the fact that somebody had to run it around multiple times. So it's like this evidence of a lot of handwork into it.
Definitely. So I like how those products can be different based on the vision of each person who organized it. And
Yeah.
that was an interesting, just as awesome as the Met. But I think with that project in particular, that summer in 2019, I was pregnant with my son, and I was like, wait, I don't know if I should go. It's hot out here. I said, I cannot have a baby in Martha's Vineyard. But we went out there and we presented our presentation at a Black Arts event called The Convening. And that was a really great experience because we were able to take this idea and we made the book second edition. And it was like, I was like on there with like photographers and poets and writers, prolific writers.
Wow.
And we had people who would speak in the spoken word, and the art was there. We each got a chance to speak, and I think it's always the beautiful thing when you can take everyone's strengths and you put it together for a final project, and I enjoy those type of things.
That's incredible. Were these so these groups that you were in, did you make all these connections from going to grad school at Pratt, or
Just being and supporting some of our invitations, that everyone, like social media is small, it's big but small, and you know who is out there doing things. And so I feel like from going to shows and supporting other people, and being in shows, like particularly that one from Martha's Vineyard in the literary book, that was from Newark. So all the artists were pretty much from, photographers and writers were from Newark. I would spend a lot of time. I was on the board at the print shop there at one point. I go to art shows. I have works in shows.
Yeah.
But Black Women in Print, that was all virtual. I never really met many of them. I met a few, but most of us were just virtual, in this virtual space through emails and just coordinating how we're going to impact the world by including Black Women in Print. But I feel like, and then the Rush Arts, I was in shows with them, and then I was invited. Usually it's invitations. It's not an open call.
so it's like putting in the time for like seeking out
putting in the
groups
work,
and the networking,
putting in the work,
Yeah.
and putting in the work, and just continuing to work
Yeah.
as an individual.
And like you
even though-
mentioned, like you go into shows and supporting people by like putting yourself there and standing up for them, and then you kind of get.
And if there
it
is an
back,
open
yeah.
call, then you respond. You look
Yeah.
at their credentials and say, maybe I'll respond to this open call. You invited me, or like, okay, who else is in the show? So a lot of those things I look at, decide what I'm going to do.
That's cool. I feel like the people usually, to make it really successful in the art world, is like you have to kind of really be a go-getter and put yourself out there and seek out opportunities.
And it's
get
hard
your
work.
name out.
That hard work.
It takes a lot
it's
of
hard
years,
work,
yeah.
and a lot of years, and just time, sweat.
What year was it that you graduated from grad school?
In 2009 from Pratt.
Yeah.
But I continued even when
So
I
yeah,
was
it takes
teaching.
years.
It takes years, and I think what helped me to gain momentum, I feel like I didn't stop when I was teaching. Like a lot of things people teach and stop, whether they be a college professor or a K through 12. Like people stop the art practice, but I continued. But I also use that to my advantage by showing my students, whether I taught K through 12 or college, whatever I'm teaching, that I can be a model for what it takes.
Yeah.
I'm not a role model, but I mean I can say, okay, it is possible to do more than one thing.
Yeah, demonstrating that.
Yeah. So
Did you, when you started teaching, did you intend that that's what you were just going to do full time for indefinitely, or did you intend that you wanted to be a studio artist, really?
I think I wanted it to be both, because I think in high school I had a really great art teacher, and she was both. Like she was a ceramicist, like really well known in Charleston, Betty Mueller Romer. And she also taught my brother too, so we know we had the same art teacher, and he's an artist too. Eric Mack, he's in Atlanta, and my little brother is Michael Mack, and he's here in Savannah at SCAD. And so basically, like we all went to the same high school, and both of us had the same teacher. But I feel like she was a professional ceramic artist, and she was an awesome art teacher. So I think just having that model in front of me, I think that would really influence me to do it. And I feel like even when I started high school, I said, I want to be an art teacher, and I wanted to continue to take extra classes. And that summer I took that printmaking class and submitted my portfolio, and I got denied for AP art. I was like, wait, I took art 1 and 2, I did a portfolio, and I still get denied. And that was like really difficult for me. That was like my senior year. So I had to like really figure out what I was gonna do quickly, because the track I thought I was gonna do of being an artist changed.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I like kids. And, you know, a lot of people in my family are educators, aunts and uncles, principals, and all that. So I said, let me just try to combine art and education. So then I decided to take teaching classes in high school. So I learned how to do lesson plans. I shifted a lot. I did yearbook. I wrote about the people who were in the class where I wanted to be, to see what they were doing, but then also take photographs and write about art, you know, in different ways. And so I found ways to still be involved, but I really missed that time and experience. But for that year, I didn't have access to art classes my senior year. So it was very traumatic for me. And I felt like I didn't want that feeling for anyone else. And I didn't feel like, who am I to judge that person isn't ready? If they're not ready, then how do I get them ready? So from that time on, I decided I wanted to be art teacher. I didn't want to deny access for anyone who had potential.
Yeah, so we're also, I mean, just the idea of to be that young and like for, you know, somebody judging portfolios or whatever and saying, no, you can't be in this AP art class. And like that could have been a thing that had shut the door for you forever. Like maybe if you hadn't been so tenacious, you would have been like, well, I guess I'm not a good artist. And then you would have never continued on.
Exactly.
Think how many people have that.
But that helped. With that experience, that pushed me to make sure that didn't happen for anyone else.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, so I think one day it's going to come back. I'm going to find out how to use that to my advantage for other people to just have access to classes.
Did you ever sort of find out why you didn't get into that art class?
There was no explanation. Back, you know, even when you don't get into school now, you don't, you know, I don't think they tell you why you don't get in. But I feel like it was a full circle for me because just recently, that person did just comment on social media, oh, you're doing great, you know.
The teacher of that class?
Yeah.
Wow.
We're still in contact, and it was years ago when she had Facebooked me and she said, I apologize for not seeing it in you. You're an awesome artist, you're awesome. And I think that was closure for me for many years. And so things can change, you know, if you continue to work and don't stop, you know.
That's kind of incredible that so you were Facebook friends with this teacher from your high school.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't take an AP art class. It's kind of interesting that you were Facebook friends with her anyway, but that's
she probably found me.
Oh, did she?
I don't think I was looking for her.
So she came across your name and like remembered your name as this person who she had denied from AP art class. That's very interesting.
I might even gone back to school to give a visit, and then maybe that was kind of
maybe she thought of it.
Yeah, so I don't know.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, she just commented last week. But shout out to that teacher. I will not say her name.
Well, I think that's very cool that she took the effort of reaching out to, and I'm sure, like you said, it spurred something in you for teaching and not wanting and like making sure that you weren't shutting the doors in students' faces when they're that young and still figuring things out. So the fact that you also got notification from her, I think, is a kind of amazing full circle thing.
Definitely so. So that's why I struggle a lot between like, okay, well, how educational do I want to do, and like I want to be able to be a professional artist and be able to do both. And that's why I think I like what I'm doing now, because I can, if I want to do a workshop for kids, if I want to just do a demonstration, if I want to do art talk, like I can do so many different things because I have that drive to provide access for people. Yeah. At the last conference I did in Ohio, it was a Mid-America Print Council, and that was really monumental to me because I didn't know how many people were going to come, you know, I just demonstrated. For the first time, I didn't have to like do any PowerPoint. I didn't have to do a presentation.
You didn't have to talk a lot, yeah.
And I had to talk a lot. I just had to demonstrate. And I was like, I could really focus on the art of Makuhanga. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And the room was filled with people. And at the end, people were clapping. And I had like the overhead TV. I wanted the overhead TV. I wanted the mic. Everything I asked for.
Yeah.
You know, I had.
So you could have a video of yourself later?
Yeah. I got clips and stuff, but the overhead was more for overhead camera live for the moment so they could see my hands.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. So everywhere I go, I always have that. And I also I was on the committee for diversity, so I said make sure we think about people who might be hearing impaired. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but people who might need assistance in sign language, interpreters. And so they were there because we found out that there was somebody that was there, but it was the first time doing a demonstration with a sign language interpreter. Wow. So I was like, wow, this is like
it's very professional. Yeah.
So I make sure everyone has access, you know. So I think that was really a big moment. That was like maybe about a month ago or so.
Okay.
In Ohio, Akron, Ohio. That was a really good experience.
You're really getting around the country, around the world, yeah.
Akron. Yeah.
Japan, Hawaii, Akron.
Yeah.
And I know, okay, so by the time that this show happens, it will be past year. So tomorrow you're doing a workshop at Sulphur. So unfortunately this is broadcasting after your workshop.
Yes,
but
yes.
Do you want to give a little, it sounds like you really enjoyed doing workshops, so hopefully we'll see you around town doing more in the future. And the one tomorrow is about, it's like developing your professional artist persona.
Practice outside the studio.
Yeah.
Personas, I don't know about personas. That's not my thing, but just be you. But I feel like just getting comfortable with being able to take your skills and your tools and being able to operate anywhere, anytime, any place, for however long that is. I think that's kind of what I want the workshop to be about, and just my journey. All the different collaborations I've done. When you step outside the studio, you can stay in the studio if you want to, but then you're missing opportunities to connect and partner and collaborate with people. And so just how do you do that, and where do you see yourself, and what does your art say to you?
What is your what's your favorite and least favorite aspect of being a printmaker?
Having access to a space. That's the part I don't like. I'm making a space now, but ideal space will come in the future, but just a bigger space.
Just the fact that it's not a thing where you just have like a paintbrush and a piece of paper, and that you need more.
Exactly. I feel like I have everything I need with just a space, and just like the camaraderie, right? And just I like being around other printmakers. Like that's the part I miss about being in New York. Like I met so many artists, like you're not talking full conversations, but in between a snack break or in between someone might be waiting for something to dry. Hey, how's it going? What you working on? Like I'm working on this. And then like the print shops would have classes, so I would take classes there, and that's how I learned my kohanga. Because if you remember renting, then you get a discount to take classes at discount. You still have to pay, but it'd be like 6-week sessions, and that's how I learned my kohanga. I took April Bomber, who was my teacher. She wrote a book about it as well. I took her class 6 times when I was renting there.
You really connected with her.
We still talk all the time, and I just saw her when I went to the International Print Fair in New York. She sat right in the front row when I was doing my panel. So she's like, she's.
I love all these different conferences and talks that you do. This is really inspiring. I've never really thought to join different sort of national groups like this, but this is very cool that you do this. I love it.
It feels scholarly. Like people just think as an artist, a messy artist, but no, we actually can put our thoughts together, and we can present. We can display our work, and also we can explain ourselves, talking with little imagery, if you really connected with your
pictures
work.
Worth 1,000 words and all.
Exactly.
No, as you're talking, it is very scholarly. That's a great word for it. And I mean, as a full-time artist, it's literally never occurred to me to try to go to a conference or anything like that. I just think of it for people with academic jobs.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't even know, like, is there a painting conference? Like, maybe there is. Like,
I think there's very specific. There's
conference, I don't know.
You could be like still life painting group or like in plein air painting group. Like, there's kind of specific aspects of it that you can join.
Big conferences. Are that exist?
I will look into it and I will let you know.
Okay,
I'm going to do some research.
Okay.
Let's talk about, so I think recently you've come up with, you delved into a new realm and you did a children's book.
Yeah.
How did this come about? How did this opportunity come to you?
Yeah, so I feel like they found me on social media.
The publisher or the writer?
The publisher, Kakila Penguin Random House. And so they came to me in the email. First when I got the email, I was like, this must be a scam. Like, you hear all these little emails.
So it's a big New York publishing house.
It was a big, so I was like, let me see if this is, so I checked the website to see if the name's really there. I was like, okay, this is legit. This is real people. This is a real email. I said, I guess they're looking for me. And then we had a Zoom conversation. And then from there, I was like, well, how did you find me? Like, well, I guess people research. And it's not the first time people have researched and found me.
Yeah.
And so then from there, they said, we had this manuscript about this self-taught artist and barber named Elijah Pierce, and he was a wood carver. And so we figured, since you carve wood, then we want you to do it too. And I was like, well, I don't even know who Elijah Pierce is, and so I had to like research on my own, figure who he was and why was he important. And around COVID, when COVID first started in that fall, they had a big show at the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. I couldn't get there, but I bought the book, and that book was the closest thing I can use to understand what his work looked like versus the the internet.
And is he passed away or is he still alive?
He passed away. He was like living like in 1892 and he died like in the mid 80s or so.
So his idea was to do this children's book about him.
Yeah, it's a whole book about him. Wow. And so like basically there was 2 authors for that book, and I met them for the first time this summer. And one of the authors, she had written a number of books, and the other author, she wrote playwrights, because she wrote a play about Elijah Pierce in Ohio. Wow. That's how they made that connection. So it was a great project to work on, because I got a chance to know more about him. I researched him. I ended up finding out that there were films that was produced in the 1970s, and I ended up contacting the 2 film directors who I emailed today.
Oh, no way.
And so they gave me like photographs that they had developed like years ago before I was born.
So you have so much reference material.
I had a lot of reference material because I wanted the barbershop to look like the 70s, but also look like what the shop what it looked like.
So what is the title of the book?
You Gotta Meet Mr. Pierce.
You Gotta Meet Mr. Pierce.
Yeah.
Has it come out yet?
It's coming out January 2023.
Okay.
January 31st to be exact, but pre-order is available now at any platform.
And you said you have like a book tour you're going on, right? Which is
Planning now. I got 3 dates already. Ohio, New York, and Jersey so far.
And the publishing house just kind of does this for you, and you just go where they organize for you? How does that go?
Well, they have a publicist, and so we kind of compile where we want to go, and then I guess they do
Wow.
their magic. But then publishing houses, they don't always pay for you for travel.
Yeah.
So right now I'm researching like travel grants, and also thinking about becoming members of illustration societies.
Oh, like the Society of Illustrators.
So I'm thinking about becoming a member of
They have,
that.
so if you join that and then you go to New York, there's this beautiful townhouse that's, I think, is maybe on either the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side, where it's like they're like clubhouse of the Society of Illustrators, and they always have art hanging up in there, and they do fun networking events. So you got to check that out.
Send me a link to
Yeah.
there. I need to go check that out.
It's beautiful. It's very old New York feeling, like it's in a brownstone or something in a neighborhood.
Fancy.
Right? It'll be fun for you to get back to New York.
Definitely,
Get a chance.
Definitely so. I can't wait to go. I'll go again, maybe by January. Just to I want to take my daughter bouncing around for illustration, but I want to take my daughter and my family, my husband and my son, to go see my work at the Met before it comes down February 3rd, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but illustration, I'm really interested in just like, if you know the artist Jacob Lawrence.
Yeah, totally.
Right, and so like he did amazing things with like fine arts and like anything that he needed to do, like as far as books, or he did everything. And so I want to kind of combine the fine arts and in print, and then also making work for children. Like I feel like something that can inspire them, or something that they can be in their room, because why not have something beautiful in their room that's not a car or like a doll? Like, why it gotta be that? You know, that's cool. I make doll prints too, but I mean, I feel like children need nice works in their art. They need nice art in their rooms.
Art as well.
And inspiring. Like the times have changed. Like I went to Target yesterday, and like I was like, my eyes seeing different. Like they had a whole section of inclusion and diversity books. Everything was just like different shades of browns and tones of this and that color. And it's just beautiful to see how times have changed, because now you don't have to look for that section.
Right.
Like now we are included in the whole books of people from all over the world.
Right.
But it was a whole section just brown people. I was like, wow, this is beautiful. And my daughter was right there looking at the books. I got that one. I got one. I got that one.
Yeah.
And it's just great. It's just times have changed. It's a great time.
Not like when we were kids, and maybe it would be like,
you got that one book way in the back, or where's that doll? You got that one doll way in the back. Like it doesn't have to be like that now. Even I saw that Target had Target need to pay me, but even had like the different tones of brown on like the Santa Claus coming out the chimney, like little doll coming out. But this is different. The Nutcracker has shades of browns.
Nutcracker did?
Yeah. So all types of things are different now.
I love
so it's
that.
a great time to like just. We've all been here, and it's just a matter of how historically people want to pretend that we haven't all been here, but we've all been here the whole time.
Well, it must be really cool for you to see, for your kids to know that they're growing up having that
definitely
representation.
Yeah, we have a long way to go, but I mean, it's a step.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Jennifer Mack Watkins. And then just to sum up, so you have a piece up at Sulphur Studios right now, and you have some work at the Met in New York.
One work
through January.
Yeah,
okay. And then I'll post a link in our show liner notes to your website and to the children's book where people can pre-order it.
Yep. Thank you. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Here are some fun creative events coming up over the next week. On Thursday the 17th at 7 p.m., Erin Dunn, who I recently interviewed, the curator at the Jepson, is giving a workshop at Sulphur Studio called The Art of the Studio Visit. The workshop is going to demystify what a curatorial studio visit entails. Sue Carey Drummond is the current On View resident artist at Sulphur Studio. And this Saturday at 2 p.m., she's giving a pop-up card workshop. It's free to attend. Materials provided and pre-registration is required. And also on Saturday the 19th, 9 p.m., House of Gunt is back for another jaw-dropping, mind-blowing drag experience like no other. The tickets are available at the Graveface website. Up next on WRUU, it's That Old Savannah Magic from 4 to 6 p.m. It's a variety show featuring Savannah history, radio theater, interviews, and music.
You are listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul.